What up, everybody? Good morning and happy Tuesday. Dan Kasper Show on the air, radio dials. You got a couple of those 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also online, Sports Talk 1051.com. Video stream up and rolling on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. How y'all doing on this April 4th? Huh? Hopefully, you're off to a fantastic start, and maybe after watching that Brewers game yesterday, you're feeling pretty good. I don't know if G-Man's alive. I don't know if that man is alive right now. I haven't. Oh, he did text. He just did. He just did. G-Man is alive at the game yesterday. 10-0 for the Brew Crew in their home opener, highlighted by rookie Bryce Terang and his first career home run, but not only his first career home run, grand salami, getting it done. We were talking about Bryce Terang quite a bit yesterday. First takeaways from the opening series against the Cubbies. Some of the youngsters, specifically, maybe a little more Bryce Terang. All right, didn't look like the moment was too big for him. Pretty solid. And then what does he do yesterday? Picks up his first dinger, which happens to be a grand slam in front of his family, too. I'm sure a majority of you have probably already seen the videos and such, but what a heck of a moment for the youngster. Collected a couple of hits yesterday, including that grand slam and a walk. And the guy's he's only struck out once so far, and I know it's an extremely small sample size, but I think to me that just for a young guy coming in, a lot of confidence at the plate. I mean, you got a guy in Bryce Terang so far this year in 10 at bats, 10 official at bats. He's struck out just once. And then you got a guy like Christian Yelich, who this year in 15 at bats has struck out 9 times. 4 yesterday. 4 times he struck out yesterday. 9 on the season. Yes, it's 5 more at bats, but you got a youngster like Terang who's struck out once, just once. Of the 6 strikeouts yesterday, 4 of them coming from Yelly. Brian Anderson, though, was the first Brewer to get on the home run leaderboard yesterday with his dinger. So it's been kind of the newcomers so far leading the way for the Brewers. Winker picked up another RBI, walked a couple of times. It's been the newbies getting it done. Why not? I love it, man. I love it. We're going to talk, obviously, recapping this game and such, but looking ahead to tonight's game, which we were kind of touching on a little bit yesterday. But I'm really curious to see what has Wade Miley got left. What version are we going to get? Looking at the last few years of Wade Miley. Last year, he was dinged up. Obviously, we remember his time with the Brewers. One of those like low signings. You looked at his numbers specifically when he was with Baltimore, and I was like, meh. But then, 5-2 in Milwaukee, 2.57 ERA, kind of resurrected his career. Goes to Houston, 14-6 with a 3.98. Cincinnati, then after that, dinged up in 2020. Bounces back in 2021 with a 12-7 record, 3.37 ERA. Last year, just appearing in 9 games, starting 8 of them, but 3.16 ERA. So, to me, I'm curious to see what we got with Wade Miley. Which kind of version are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that has kind of struggled a little bit with injuries here, or are we going to get the Wade Miley that, 2018, 2019, 2021? Which one are we going to get? And counterpart on the mound is some dude named Max Scherzer. He's pretty good, right? Yeah, Max Scherzer pretty good. So if you're looking at career matchups, Victor Caratini has actually played very well against Max Scherzer. 15 at bats, he's 467. 467 against him. Not many people can say that. And Voit, 8 at-bats, 375. The guy that has the most success against him, though, and hasn't fared too bad, has been Christian Yelich. 34 at-bats, 294 with 3 home runs and 5 RBIs. All right, Yelly, come on now. Let's see it tonight. Let's see it tonight. And speaking of the youngsters, like a Weimer who had his first assists, chucking out Vogelbach at second base from right field there yesterday. But I mean, you've got the youngsters of Weimer and of Terang and even Garrett Mitchell going up against one of the all-time greats. Will there be some butterflies up at the plate for them? Will there be some nerves, excitement, all that stuff? Man, can't wait for tonight. So we'll definitely talk some Brewers coming up here in just a little bit. What else we got on the docket? Well, we got the national champions, UConn Huskies. UConn Huskies getting it done yesterday, or I should say last night, against San Diego State. I don't think it was probably too much of a surprise to anybody, but UConn just ever since the tournament started, just methodically getting it done. I don't think they really had a close game throughout this whole tournament. I just didn't get it, whatever. Yeah, I was gonna say were they challenged or anything like that, but that's kind of dumb there. But nonetheless, we talk about blue blood programs in college basketball. And when you say blue blood programs, like I was reading a little bit early this morning, like BetMGM, they threw out Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas. Then they also put in UCLA and Indiana. But you got UConn now, who has won 5 championships, 5 national championships. 1999, 2004, 2011, 2014, 2023. Is UConn, in your opinion, should they be considered a blue blood program? Have they gone into that status? Have they reached that status, in your opinion, as a blue blood college basketball program? Or do you view maybe blue bloods as need a little bit more history? Their first championship wasn't until 1999, so it's just 24 years ago. But I mean, that's also pretty darn impressive when you think about it. In the last 24 years, last quarter of a century, that they've got 5 national championships, and they've done it with 3 different head coaches too. Calhoun, as everybody knows, Kevin Ollie. That might be a trivia question later on down the road. Hey, who is this national champion winning coach for UConn? And then Dan Hurley last night. But do you consider UConn in that blue blood tier now? And maybe you already did. But there's still a lot of people out there, pundits, analysts, historians, that will view mostly it's Kansas, it's Kentucky, it's North Carolina, and it's Duke. And maybe it's just because they've got a little bit longer of a pedigree, a little bit longer of a history. Then they throw Indiana in there, although it's been a long time since Indiana, competing for a national championship. UCLA reached a few Final Fours with Ben Howell in there. But in terms of a national championship, been a little bit. And a lot of that, let's face it, is probably due to, Wooden and such back during that era. So, kind of curious. Might put up a Twitter poll on that. But if you don't have Twitter, hit me up with a text. Shoe Doctor's bullpen line, 715-830-1912. But you look at the run that UConn had in this tournament, 87-63 against Rick Pitino and Iona. 70-55 against St. Mary's, number 5 seeded St. Mary's. 88-65 against Arkansas. 82-54 against Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. 72-59 against Miami in the Final Four, and then last night 76-59. Just matriculating throughout the tournament. But we'll talk a little college hoops to recap the men's season. Also, Bucks are back in action tonight. They're taking on the Washington Wizards. However, you might want to do a little bit of scoreboard watching with this one because you've got Celtics and 76ers in action tonight as well. Bucks holding on to a 2-game lead in the Eastern Conference for first place. Over those Celtics. So you got to be some 76ers fans tonight, Bucks fans. You got to be some 76ers fans. Get a little bit of help there. But this is the first of a back-to-back. You know, they're in Washington tonight. Then they got to hop on a plane. Then they're taking on the Bulls at home tomorrow. Then they'll finish up their regular season Friday and Sunday. But still, we got some things to be decided in this Eastern Conference when it comes to the Bucks. Just kind of looking at still it's pretty wide open in terms of who's clinched spots. More so in the West, more so in the Western Conference, because just 3 teams in the Western Conference have clinched spots so far. That's Denver, that's Memphis, and that's Sacramento. Nobody else. I mean, there's been teams eliminated, Portland, San Antonio, and Houston. But that's, yeah. And the East is kind of weird because right now in the teams that are in the play-in, Toronto has clinched a play-in spot, but they're 9th right now. However, Miami, who's 2 games ahead of them, Atlanta and Chicago, the final teams remaining in that play-in, haven't clinched a play-in spot yet. But there's only one team that's on the outside of the play-in that has not been eliminated yet, and that's the Orlando Magic. So basic math would tell us as soon as Orlando's eliminated, it's probably going to be kind of a waterfall where everybody else will have at least clinched a spot in the East. And Orlando really has no room for error because they are 4 games behind Chicago for that final spot in the play-in berth there. So, but we'll talk a little Bucks as they take on the Wizards here tonight. We got a Grind My Gears Tuesday, so if there's anything grinding your gears, let us know. Get it off your chest. Hit us up. All right. Let's hear from you. We got a pop quiz. Tuesday pop quiz. If I remember, I'll get it to you before the 7 o'clock hour. I already know what it is. Got it written down. It's a very interesting one. I'm not going to give you any tips because I don't want anybody to look it up or try to find the answer. But when I looked this up, I thought of the question. I'm like, okay, this might be a good one. And when I found the answer, I was like, nobody's going to get this. We'll see. We'll see how good your memory is. You only have to go back to like 12, 13 years. Anyways, I'll get it to you by the end of this hour. It's a good one. If anybody gets this without you're pretty darn smart. And then we'll get to a little press pass. If you could ask anybody one question, anybody in the world of sports, one question, and get that truthful answer, what would it be? Anybody. You get one shot at it, and you know you're going to get a truthful answer. What the heck is that thing going to be? Share it with the rest of the class, okay? Share it with the rest of the class. But let's get things going here this morning. Let's talk some Brewers baseball after that exciting home opener yesterday. Recapping the home opener, looking ahead to tonight's game. What are your, let's say, realistic expectations for Wade Miley? What are some realistic expectations? Do you think he's one of the top wild cards on this ball club? Then we're gonna have a little bit more of a Bryce Terang love fest here for the second day in a row too. So, but let's get things going here. Coming up on the leadoff this morning, Brewers baseball improving to 3-1 Not a bad start after that opening day loss. We'll talk about it coming up in just a couple minutes. Bryce Terang with that grand slam hold yesterday to help propel the Brewers to a 10-0 victory in the home opener. Willie Peralta looking pretty darn solid as well, picking up the win, going 6 strong innings, only giving up 2 hits, striking out 7, 0 earned runs, obviously. Brian Anderson picking up the first home run for the Brewers this season. He also was 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs over there, too. So let's recap. Kind of a fun game yesterday. Anybody who was on that bus trip yesterday, you were definitely treated for a pretty darn entertaining game yesterday. There's no doubt about it. But obviously, a lot of attention on Bryce Terang yesterday. We were talking about Bryce Terang yesterday as maybe being one of the biggest takeaways from the opening series against the Cubbies. This youngster, looking like the moment maybe not too big for Terang. Just looks really comfortable. And you listen, like if you were listening to his chat with Sophia Minert yesterday too, the Brewers on field reporter there. Seems really humble. Seems very soft spoken. Not a lot of words, although he looked pretty jacked up. Running around the bases after that home run. You're saying, why wouldn't you be? Your first home run is the home opener, and it's a grand slam with your family in the stands. I mean, come on. That's pretty darn awesome. Even Freddie Peralta said after the game yesterday he almost shed a tear after watching that too. So, but Bryce Terang, man, what else can we say about him? Craig Counsell. I was reading a little bit this morning from Brewers.com from Adam McCulvey, and he said Craig Counsell keeps urging everyone to watch closely while Bryce Terang plays defense. But it's been the bat so far that has been, Bryce Terang's calling card right now. And just looks calm. Bryce Terang, but also Joey Wiemer. I mean, it's the newcomers that are really getting it done for the Brewers so far. It's the youngsters, and it's the Brian Andersons. It's the Jesse Winkers. It's those guys that have been getting it done so far on the offensive side of things for the Brewers. And I guess if you're a Brewers fan, one, that's got to make you pretty darn excited. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, the likes of a Yelly and maybe a little bit of a Willie Adames. Let's, it's only 4 games, so I don't want to panic. I don't want to, throw those guys under the bus. But you got to be pumped to kind of see what you're seeing with these youngsters and these new guys over here. It's freaking awesome right now. I mean, again, numbers are inflated. Only 4 games or just a couple for some of these guys. Anywhere between 10, 15 at-bats. But Brian Anderson right now, 455, 4 RBIs. Bryce Terang, we already mentioned it. For a youngster, he's only struck out once in 10 appearances. We got, we were talking about Joey Wiemer, 10 at-bats. Another youngster, he's only struck out twice. And then you got Christian Yelich right now, who's already struck out 9 times. 9 times? Yeah, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Quote, 9 times. Rowdy Telleza struck out 6 times. Jesse Winker, the DH, hitting 364. He's got 5 RBIs right now, leading the team in him and Bryce Terang, thanks to Bryce's grand slam yesterday, leading the team in RBIs. It's been a fun season. I mean, how quickly a game and a half changes a narrative to begin the season. We touched on it a little bit yesterday. For the longest time, it looked like, oh God, Brewers can't score another run, or they're struggling to score. They're struggling to score runs. I mean, they didn't get anything in the opener. Then they took until the 8th inning in the second game to get 3 runs, and they held on to that win. Then what do? They followed it up with 9 in the series finale, and then put up a 10-burger yesterday. But that's sports. That's baseball, isn't it? Watch tonight. Now going up against Max Scherzer. Would it surprise anybody if they maybe struggle a little bit on the mound, or I should say, struggle a little bit at the plate? Nah, I don't think so. I'm enjoying it though, man. I know it's only 4 games in, and we still got 150 some of these things to go, but I'm enjoying it. I've been enjoying it these last 3 games specifically. Not so much opening day, but the last 3, yeah, why not? And a lot of it is because of these rookies and these newcomers coming in. Kind of maybe bringing in a little bit of a different energy, a little bit more of an enthusiasm, a different vibe within the clubhouse. Bringing that spark a little bit. At least initially, it looks like they are at the beginning part of this thing. Now, will it continue tonight with Scherzer going up against Wade Miley? Wade Miley is such a, you know, to me, he's going to be an interesting wild card for this ball club. We know about the top 3. Yesterday, we were talking about Freddie Peralta. Freddie Peralta was a guy that a lot of people thought in spring training and offseason was a big-time wild card, or one of the top wild cards for the Brewers this year in terms of their success and how far that they could go. If he could get back to his all-star self just a couple years ago, we already know what to kind of expect from Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns. If Peralta is that all-star guy that he was a couple years ago, then there's no doubt about it. The Brewers have one of the top 3 starting rotations in all of baseball. Freddie looked his part yesterday. Now let's hope that it continues. But I think another wild card that we didn't hear a whole lot about, or maybe an intriguing player that we haven't talked a whole lot about, Wade Miley. And this is a guy that, ever since his Brewers kind of resurrecting his career back in 2018, he came on the scene after being in Baltimore in 2017, and it was just 8-15, but it was a 5.61 ERA, and it's like, oh Lord, what is David Stearns doing? Well, a pretty darn solid year going 5-2 and 2.57 ERA. Didn't pitch a whole lot of innings, only pitched 80, almost 81, but followed up by going to Houston. Pretty darn solid, 14-6, 3.98 ERA, 167 innings. Then going to Cincinnati and got dinged up in 2020, only pitched 14 in the third, bounced back, had a nice 2021 season, 12-7, 163 innings pitched, 3.37 ERA, and then hurt again last year, only pitching in 37 innings in 9 total games, started 8 of those. But he is 36 years old. If it's the Wade Miley that we saw in 2018, that Houston saw in 2019, that the Reds saw in 2021, I think we would all be flipping ecstatic and be so pumped up and excited about that. That's why, to me, he's an intriguing, under the radar type of wild card for this. Because if he goes out there and he pitches like some of those numbers that we just went through, you got a pretty darn solid starting rotation. I mean, I would put it in the conversation as one of the better ones in all of baseball. Maybe not the most popular ones like name recognition that some of these teams employ. I don't care about name recognition, though. I care about numbers and wins and how good you are at your job and how well you're playing the sport. And if Wade Miley's putting up numbers like he did, like we've seen these last few years, and he's healthy, and you add it to what the Brewers already have, that's a fantastic starting rotation. Because let's be real. Let's be a little bit honest here. I'm pumped up. I'm excited to see these newcomers and these youngsters playing really well for the Brewers. Chances are they're going to come down to earth here a little bit. They're going to go through some ups and downs. Most likely some of the youngsters, they're probably going to go through some tough stretches. I think the biggest thing will be like the Bryce Terangs and the Joey Weimers, depending on how long he stays up when Luis Rios comes back up. What's the roster moves going to look like and such. But the biggest thing for those youngsters, in my opinion, is going to be once they go through those poor stretches, they go through those slumps, how they react to it. Do they get too hard on themselves? Do they get too much in their minds? Do they start to overthink it, panic a little bit? Because a lot of these guys are off to really good starts, but it's going to happen. They're going to get in a slump. They're going to get into a tough stretch. How do they react from that? How do they get through that? That to me is going to be something that I want to see with these youngsters. And an example might be a guy like Keston. Keston comes on the scene right away in major leagues. We were pumped about him. We wanted him, it was kind of that up and down, up and down. We wanted him to stay on the major league roster. Remember that a couple years ago? And right now he's in AAA, and we don't know if he will ever have a future on the major league ball club, like a long-term future. But that would just be the one thing with some of these youngsters here is like, how do they respond? Because it's going to happen. But going back to how that relates, in my opinion, to this pitching unit, that's where it's going to put a lot more pressure on this kind of the starting unit's kind of the veteran group of a lot of these positions on this team. Yeah, you got, Jesse Winker's a veteran, obviously. Brian Anderson's a veteran, obviously. But you get Burns and you get Woodruff and you get Peralta and then maybe Lauer and Wade Miley, and they're solid back-end starters. You can go through those slumps. You can go through those lumps of the offensive side and still win some ball games because you have such a great starting pitching staff. But I'm kind of curious to see how good old Wade Miley does so far, or does for the team this year. I'm kind of curious to see how he does. I think one other area for this team. I mean, again, it's just 3 games into this thing, or excuse me, 4 games into this thing. But one of the biggest questions leading into the season was going to be the bullpen. What was the bullpen going to look like? And probably, again, it's an extremely small sample size here, but we saw Gus Varlin a couple times. We saw, Wilson yesterday pitching 3 innings, a 3-inning save, essentially. Freddie Peralta goes out there, throws 6 strong innings, gets the 3-inning save for Wilson, or Wilson gets the 3-inning save. Javi goes out there, pitches an inning and a third, does give up 2 earned runs, but in terms of bullpen, Javi's the only one that's given up 2 or more runs so far. Otherwise, Wilson, nothing. Gus Varlin, who was the Rule 5 pick, didn't know if he was going to make the roster, nothing. Early indications or early, feedback, whatever, early looks at it. Bullpen, not bad. Again, don't want to get too caught up in it because it is just 4 games. But again, how things can quickly change, because I thought for sure on Monday morning we might be talking about what the heck is wrong with this Brewers offense again. Nothing's getting it done. Yelich has struck out 9 times, or what? Yeah, 9 times already. Rowdy Tellez hasn't been hitting consistently. Willie Adames is only at 200. It's the newcomers and the youngsters getting it done right now. And hopefully when those guys, more than likely, odds are, they're going to go through a little bit of a slump. The Brewer veterans of Yelich and Tellez and Willie Adames can turn it around a little bit and get back at it. All right, you guys ready for your pop quiz question of the day? Bryce Terang's first home run yesterday was obviously the grand slam. Your pop quiz, your Tuesday pop quiz question of the day. The last Milwaukee Brewer who their first home run was a grand slam. I will give you a hint, just because you could go through, it's like, oh my God, that's how many years and how many players. I will give you a hint. It was in the 2000s. And you're like, well, that's not much fit. Okay, we'll give you from 2010 to now. It's in that frame. 2010 to now. Okay. Think about it for a couple minutes and then try not to look it up. It is a tough one, but I want to see if anybody can get this. Okay. Because I'll tell you, when I looked it up, I was like, what? I'm like, okay, that's a good little nugget. So text me the answer 713-1912, and I probably gave away, I probably eliminated a couple of players by telling you what my reaction was. So let's take that break. We'll get you the answer. And then, is UConn officially a blue blood? What do you think? Let me know. Don't forget, Friday we will be over at Hy-Vee doing the show there. It's Masters Week, but we'll be doing the show live from Hy-Vee starting at 6 a.m. Also, we've got the Carpet City Flooring Center Putting Challenge. I have seen the putting green. I finally got to see a picture of it yesterday, and it looks spectacular. And you've got a little water hazard and a little sand bunker in there too. So we got that putting challenge going on. Everybody who stops by, everybody's going to get a chance for 3 putts. All right, 3 putts. Even just trying it, you're going to be entered to win some prizes. That includes a brand new Odyssey putter, a new Callaway driver, courtesy of our friends from Carpet City Flooring Center. Hy-Vee is going to be throwing some stuff in there too. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. Stop by, hit your putts, be entered to win that. You don't have to stick around the whole time because we're going to be doing it for a few hours. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Plus, I know Hy-Vee's got some Masters theme menu items going on this week too. So can't wait for Masters theme or Masters Week. It's continuing here. Still haven't seen any pairings or anything like that, but I'm assuming it'll pop out here today. Keep these responses coming for the trivia question. A lot of good answers. I see. I'm guessing a couple of you already cheated and looked it up and Googled it to find that answer. So shame on you guys. Shame on you. But a lot of these answers, big thanks for kind of just throwing out some random names over there. Keep them coming. I'll tell you what the answer is at the just past the 7 o'clock hour. So, all right, let's got G-Man chiming in here a little bit too. Captain Wade Miley will have his best year this year. JR's Twins and Brewers in the World Series. Brewers winning 6. P.S. Can't thank you enough for the going to the game yesterday. Best game his eyes have ever seen. G-Man was at the home opener. He was on our bus trip yesterday there too. So we're going to have some more bus trips throughout the year. So make sure you're paying attention to when those opportunities come up. Okay. So is UConn a blue blood? UConn winning their 5th national championship all within the last quarter of a century. First one coming in 1999. But it was kind of talked about. It was a little bit debated between, before the game last night or even when, UConn was getting into the Final Four. And I was reading an article on, was it BetGM? Yeah, BetGM. And they talked about, your blue bloods are Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, and Kentucky. Then they threw in UCLA and Indiana in the conversation as maybe like the next 2. And I know there's an article up on Yahoo Sports, talking about, UConn and, can debate about whether they're a blue blood program or not. But what you look at what this team has done in the last 23, 24, 25 years, it's pretty darn remarkable to have those championships and 3 head coaches. The Kevin Ollie one is probably going to be a great trivia question, years down the road. Who's the, won the national championship for UConn? Was it 2012, 2013, whatever that year was against, Kentucky, the 7 and 8 seeds. Wisconsin should have been in there. But I digress. But do you consider UConn a blue blood, or do you consider, in order to be a blue blood program, you have to have a little bit of, how do I want to say this, more history? Because I think and that's kind of the argument for a lot of these, quote, blue blood programs, is you're seeing people make the argument that, well, North Carolina's, done it, they won championships going back to, Jordan and all that. Duke, at the beginning of the Krzyzewski era. Indiana with Bobby Knight. UCLA, John Wooden. Kentucky has been around, that seems like since college basketball was created and such. And, you look at UConn, they didn't make their first Final Four till they won it in 1999. How can you be a blue blood program if you've only been, since like 23, 24 years? That's the argument for others out there. But at what point do you get in to blue blood status, to blue blood criteria? I think you got to define that. You got to answer that. I might be a little bit, how do I want to phrase this? I'm a little bit younger. I've known UConn as a pretty darn solid basketball program since I was a kid in the 90s. I've known them since that, 98 they made an Elite Eight, 95 they made the Elite Eight. So I've known UConn. I mean, the Ray Allens, right? Ray Allen, Richard Hamilton, Caron Butler. I can picture those guys wearing the UConn jersey and playing for them. So I consider UConn a blue blood team. I consider them, maybe it's just because of my age too, or 37, so I'm a little bit younger. But I know intern, Bob said last week that he considers UConn a blue blood too. So I don't know, but some don't, some won't. And the main argument that I have seen from others out there, mostly on the socials, has been got to be competitive, or you got to, be doing it for longer than they're throwing out the quarter of a century mark. You've got these, but my argument to that would be, when was the last time? I know UCLA made some Final Fours with Ben Howland and that, but when was the last time they won a national championship? When was the last time Indiana won a national championship? Indiana went to one with Mike Davis a while ago, but when was the last time they've done anything? So if you're going to use the argument about, well, they got to do, UConn's got to be doing it for a little bit longer, what do you have to say about the teams that haven't been doing anything as of late? UConn has been doing something as of late. So that would be my counter argument to that. Just because you did it a long time ago, as you're already established as, okay, you're a blue blood program, doesn't matter what you do after that? Come on. To me, UConn is a blue blood program. My opinion, they're in there. When I think of UConn, I don't think of a football program. I don't think of Dan Orlovsky playing quarterback for them. I think of a lot of great players to come through that program who played at a high level in the NBA and now have 5 national champions or national championships. 5 of them. Rest of you can chime in if you'd like, whether you think that they are a blue blood or not. There's no denying this UConn team coming in as a 4 seed. They were a trendy pick to get to the Final Four. And, man, they did not look like a 4 seed in this tournament. Beating Rick Pitino's Iona 87-63, St. Mary's 70-55, Arkansas 88-65, Gonzaga 82-54, Miami 72-59 in the Final Four, and then San Diego State last night 76-59. All right, we're gonna talk some Bucks coming up in the next hour here. Bucks taking on the Washington Wizards tonight. But you might do a little scoreboard watching tonight too, because you've got Boston visiting Philadelphia. And obviously with how the Eastern Conference standings are going, Bucks are holding on to a 2-game lead over the Celtics with just 4 to go. Bucks fans, got to be a little bit of 76ers fans tonight. Get a little bit of help. Hopefully Joel Embiid and James Harden, those guys, can help with the Bucks. But Bucks got to take care of their own business too. They got to beat Washington and such. But be a back-to-back because they're in Washington tonight. Then they got to fly back and play the Bulls. Play the Bulls tomorrow night. So, but we'll hit that up coming up in the next hour or so. Plus, don't forget your Grind My Gears. What's grinding your gears here this morning? You can hit us up with a text 715-830-1912. And what are your realistic expectations for Wade Miley? Kind of that question that we're throwing out there this morning. But what are your realistic expectations for Wade Miley? Do you think he's a wild card for this team, or you think, he's just a guy? He's just a guy right now, back end of the rotation. You think he can be a pivotal player, a pivotal starting pitcher for this team? What do you think? Hit me up. You can also find me on Twitter at DANKASPER, Facebook.com/Kasper Sports. Check it out over there. Reminder, coming up next Tuesday, a week from today, we'll be at the Packers Tailgate Tour at the Lismore. You can get your tickets at Bolton Refuge house.org/Packers to get your tickets. We'll finish up this first hour. Good morning, Morgan.
That was a fast sell on those. A lot of people excited to go see the Packers for Bolton Refuge.
Yeah, the VIPs sold. Still got some GAs available over there. So
it's always
you can see
time.
Aaron Jones or you can see me MC it. Whatever.
Are you like medium nervous or excited?
No.
Where are you falling on that scale?
I'm a vet.
Oh, you're seasoned pro, right? Yeah, right. They should be nervous coming into your turf, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. Just checking. Yep. All right. So, what'd you think of the game yesterday? Feeling better?
Brewers or which one?
Brewers.
Yeah, Brewers. Yeah, it was. I mean, come on, 10 runs, home opener. Bryce Terang, youngster, getting it done.
Now, have you been to an opener before? I know you weren't there yesterday, but have you been?
Nope.
Because I know a couple people that it was their first opener. Like, that's not a bad first opener to kick off the season. Feeling good about that.
Yeah. So.
Now, would you say you're a cell phone addict? Like, in real perspective terms, how long do you think you could go? Now, think about it, because yesterday was the 50-year anniversary of the first mobile phone call that was ever made. And I have a survey with some numbers, people talking just about how vital those phones are to them, with who couldn't go more than a weekend, that kind of thing without a phone. So where are you at on that? If you had to set that phone down and not be anywhere near it, what's your honest max where you would start getting twitchy?
5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah. I would have put you at that below 15-minute mark for sure.
And I hate it.
That blows my mind, because I'll just flat out forget where I put my phone sometimes because I don't enjoy it that much. I
get that vibration in your pocket when there's no phone in there. You've heard people
like a phantom message vibration.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, you are definitely not alone. I can tell you that. 72% of people said they couldn't imagine going more than a weekend. That would be like impossible for you. A weekend, right?
I struggle even with sleeping without an alarm clock.
Nearly more than 23% said they wouldn't last an hour. But here's the thing. There are a lot of things that people will give up instead of a phone. So go down the list. Would you give these things up before your phone? Date nights.
Yes.
V, do you want to chime in? How about TV?
Yes, because you can watch TV on your phone.
Oh, that's a go around. That's a loophole.
It's a loophole, but I take advantage of it. So.
What about the gym?
Oh, yeah.
So is there anything you wouldn't go hunting? How about that?
I need my phone to go hunting.
No, you don't.
I do.
No, you don't.
What if I fall out of a tree stand and I got to call for help?
Golf.
Well, it depends if you use the app to tell you the yardage or not. I don't, because I think that's cheating, but whatever.
Okay, so there's a possibility that you would leave your phone on the table for a golf game.
Yes.
The whole golf game?
Yes.
Or would you just start flying?
No, because a lot of times I forget that it's in the golf cart anyways too, so.
Okay. Yeah. So you're below that 15-minute mark. Now, what do you do on your phone that makes it such an addiction? Just have it?
Yeah, and I'm an idiot with it, refreshing everything. So.
That would make me nuts. Try going without it. Just put it down. See how you do. Set a timer.
There you go.
On your phone. Set a timer on your phone and see how long it takes for you to go back to it.
I gotta go pick it up now. All right, second hour kicking off on this Tuesday morning of April 4th. Big thanks to everybody tuning in. However, and wherever you may be checking us out from. Coming up here in just a second, we'll talk a little Bucks hoops as they get set to take on the Washington Wizards. But might want to do a little scoreboard watching tonight as the Boston Celtics visit the Philadelphia 76ers. And Bucks fans, got to be some 76ers fans tonight. All right, so we'll hit that up. Obviously, continue our Brewers chat after the home opening win yesterday. Bryce Terang and company, Freddie Peralta, solid outing. Now the Brewers will be taking on Max Scherzer. Wade Miley going to be on the mound for the Brewers. A lot of good responses for our pop quiz trivia question. Who was the last Brewer to hit a grand slam as his first home run? Actually, the leader was Matt Gamble for a lot of you. A lot of you picking Matt Gamble. Not bad. Not bad to think outside the box there a little bit. But it was actually Sean Markham, the pitcher, on July 4th, 2011, hit a grand salami in his first career home run. So big thanks for everybody throwing out some guesses out there. But Matt Gamble was probably the most popular one out there. I like it. That was a good one. That was a good one. So probably because 2010 and then onward, probably trying to do some math there. But nonetheless, that was your answer. So big thanks to everybody who threw out some guesses and such there. Makes it a lot of fun to kind of see where everybody kind of throws their educated guesses. All right, let's do some sports nuggets of the day here this morning. Brought to you by Ansay Associates, by the way. Let's go with, what do we got here? 1921, the Ottawa Senators beat the Vancouver Millionaires. How about that for a team name? Beat the Vancouver Millionaires in 1921 Stanley Cup Finals. The Senators became the first NHL team to win back-to-back Stanley Cup titles. Hank Aaron, 1974, tied Babe Ruth's Major League Baseball home run record with 714. Wayne Gretzky set an NHL record with his 213th point of the season. Let's go with Boston Celtics, 1996, beat the Orlando Magic 198. The loss was the Magic's first loss to an Eastern Conference team at home since April of 1994. Those were my Orlando Magic teams of the 90s. The streak was at 51 games long. 1996, Michael Jordan became the fourth player in NBA history to reach 2,000 career steals. 1998, Mark McGwire became the second National League player to hit a home run in the first 4 games of a season. Willie Mays had hit home runs in the first 4 games of the 1971 season. And 1999, the Colorado Rockies and the San Diego Padres played the first Major League game season opener to be held in Mexico. Rockies beat the Padres 8-2. The game was also the first season opener to be held in a country other than the United States or Canada. Those are just some of your sports nuggets of the day, brought to you by Ansay Associates. Let's talk some hoops, more hoops, because we were talking a little college hoops earlier. Let's talk some Milwaukee Bucks hoops. Bucks back in action tonight. 4 games left to go in the regular season. Got a little back-to-back action here. Washington Wizards tonight, then they got to hop on a plane and get back and take on the Chicago Bulls in Milwaukee tomorrow night. But got to take care of some business here as we start to wrap up this regular season. Bucks still up 2 games in the Eastern Conference standings over the Boston Celtics for first place. Haven't clinched it. They've clinched a playoff spot, but haven't clinched the 1 seed yet, obviously. But might want to do a little bit of watching as you're paying attention, listening, watching the Bucks game tonight, kind of paying attention to what's going on in Philadelphia too, because Bucks fans, you've got to be those 76ers fans tonight to kind of help the Bucks potentially clinch a spot, or I should say potentially clinch that 1 seed earlier, and then maybe the Bucks can kind of do a little load management and rest some of those guys before their playoff run. Although, I mean, they're going to get a little bit of a break after their last game of the regular season against Toronto on on Sunday because, play-in tournament's got to go. Bucks aren't going to know who they have to play yet, so they're going to get a little bit of a break here. But I would have to imagine that the Bucks, if they get this thing wrapped up by, say, tomorrow night or something like that, I wouldn't expect, and if anybody's going to the game Friday as Memphis comes to town, apologies, but if the Bucks take care of these two and say the Celtics lose tonight, Bucks aren't probably going to be playing a lot of their starters in these final two games. Maybe a few minutes here and there just to kind of keep them fresh and such, but nothing like 30-some minutes, I would have to imagine. And I think the Bucks are going to be okay with that. But while we do a little scoreboard watching, Bucks still got to take care of their own business. They still got to win their own games. They control their destiny right now. Right now, Bucks are leading the regular season series against the Wizards. In fact, they've won the last two games. They've actually been kind of close besides the first game of the season, which actually the Wizards won that one. Wizards beat them on January 1st, 118-95. Then just a couple days later, Bucks bounced back to a 123-113 victory. Most recently, they played on March 5th. Bucks just getting that 6-point victory, 117-111. So, yeah, I think Bucks are going to win. I'll make a pick. Bucks win. Bucks win by 10. They win comfortably. No, I don't know if the 76ers can get the win against Boston. That, I feel like this might go down to the last game or two. I feel like it's kind of trending in that direction here. Let me bring up the season series between both Boston and Philadelphia here. Where are we at with this thing? Boston has dominated. They've beaten them every single time. So Boston's already won the season series against the 76ers. So I guess if it came down to like a second place tiebreaker, well, Boston has that. So Boston right now, they've got the tiebreaker against Philly. They got the tiebreaker against Milwaukee. These games have been fairly close too. Celtics, you got to go back to October with their first game, 126-117 victory. Boston then February 8th, 106-99. Their last one was February 25th. So it's been a little bit, but 110-107 victory there too. So actually, I might go gosh, why not? I'll pick a 76ers win tonight. I'll ride with the 76ers. They're favored by 2.5. Give me that. Give me the 2.5. I'm using the line based off of the mothership right here. I know it's kind of different in some places. I might have it at 3, I think, or 2. But give me the 2.5. I think Celtics win by 3 in tonight's game. Or excuse me, Philadelphia. Philadelphia. I picked Philadelphia to win tonight by 3. Bucks win, and then tomorrow night we could settle this thing and clinch up that 1 seed and kind of focus on the postseason at that point in time. I know we've been kind of beating it to death here a little bit about, hey, would you rather, get the 1 seed? Would you rather have the health? It's been a topic of conversation for the longest freaking time now, and it's going to be kind of wrapping up here in a little bit, but I want both. So lock up the 1 seed in the next couple games. Rest up your guys for the postseason run. Make sure they're ready to go, and let's win this NBA championship. Let's win our second NBA championship in the last 3 years, huh? Let's get it done. Let's do it. All right, kind of going through some of the messages, but UConn, looks like the majority of you are saying, yes, UConn is a blue blood program now that they've, let's go through some of these messages. Leave me your names with some of these texts, too. Matt is saying that UConn wasn't a blue blood just a couple years ago, but I would put them in the blue blood category now. Okay, Matt. Or when you say a couple years ago, do you mean like maybe before they won last night? Because, they didn't win one a couple years ago. But, okay, regardless, Matt's got them in the blue blood category. Eric is saying, yes, UConn is definitely in the blue blood category. To your point, with those other teams like Indiana and UCLA What have you done for me lately? Nothing. Just because you did something a long time ago doesn't necessarily mean that you should keep your blue blood status. Okay. Another text here. Don't have a name with this one, but says, yes, UConn is a blue blood program. I would put them ahead of Indiana for sure. Another texter here. This one's from Adam. He says UConn should be considered a blue blood program, although I would not put Indiana or UCLA in there anymore. I think you can make the case that it's an evolving title. I'm assuming you mean evolving title by the blue blood title, right? So keep those coming. All right, let me know what you think. Some Wade Miley text. Got a texter here. This one's from Greg. Greg says Wade Miley is an interesting wild card for the Brewers this year. If he can get back to what he was when he is healthy the last few years, this makes this a very intriguing starting rotation for the Brewers, assuming the likes of Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta will be pitching at the levels that we expect from them. Another texter is, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into Wade Miley. I have to see it first to see if he can stay healthy for this team. But if he does stay healthy, that's a pretty solid back-end rotation guy for this team. A couple of texts about the Brewers, but not Wade Miley. We've got, let's go, another Matt here saying, these youngsters have been a lot of fun to watch. Assuming that they probably will go through a slump or a down period here, hopefully these other guys like Christian Yelich and Rowdy Tellez can get off the schneid and start to perform at a more consistent rate. We got another text here. This one's from Ben. Ben saying, it's been a lot of fun to see the likes of Weimer and Terang, but also the newcomers of Winker and Anderson also being contributors at the early part of the season. Not to overreact, but it looks like those low-cost signings, those low-cost moves are so far paying some nice dividends for the Brewers. You're right, because, I mean, we were talking about it in the first hour there. You know, Yelich already has 9 strikeouts. He had 4 yesterday, for crying out loud. He got on base, but, I mean, it was a walk. Every Brewer player got on base yesterday by a walk or a hit that was in that, starting lineup there. But he struck out 9 times already. And, Willy Adames. Again, these numbers, I know it's just 4 games, 3-4 games for some people, so they don't tell you everything. But Willy Adames, only 200. Rowdy Tellez, finally got a hit yesterday. He's at 133. Those guys that have been around for a few years, off to a slow start so far this year, but it's been the newbies, the Jesse Winker with 5 RBIs and 364. It's Bryce Terang hitting 500 with a grand slam yesterday, and him getting consistently on base. Joey Weimer, batting 300, but making plays from the outfield, getting his first assist. Probably helped that it was Daniel Vogelbach, rounding first and trying to get into second there, but nonetheless picked up his first career assist out there, showing off that arm that we've heard about. These younger guys, these new guys, are what's kind of providing some offense for the Brewers in the first few games here. And hopefully they can continue to contribute until the other guys like a Yelich and Adames and Tellez, hopefully, get into a little bit of a groove here. Because more than likely, at some point in time, those new guys, those youngsters, they're going to go through a little bit of a slump. They're going to go through a little bit of a down period. But like I was saying in the first hour, specifically for a guy like Terang and such, when they go through that slump, when they go through that slow start, or not slow start, but when they go through a tough stretch, the thing I'm most curious about to see is how do they come back from that? How do they rebound from that? How do they react to it? Everybody in baseball, everybody in sports is going to go through a tough stretch. But it's how you get through that stretch, how you focus on it. There was a great book I was reading. I think it's The Obstacle is the Way. I had heard about it. This was a few years ago, but it was actually I think it was in a Sports Illustrated article about like Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. They were reading it and such. It's like a stoic book. But I'm like, oh, okay, these coaches and these athletes are reading it. So I was reading it, and it was a great story. I can't remember the baseball player. It's blanking off the top of my head. But it talks about, this baseball player is telling his story and going through the slump, going through the tough stretches, but not, staying focused and not trying to panic or not trying to overcorrect anything or change anything, and just kind of staying in the moment and just talking about that focus and that perspective. And that's what I'm curious to see with these young guys, because they're off to a great start in their careers, a fast start in their careers. Not everybody, not a lot of youngsters can start off as hot as like a Bryce Terang is doing right now for the Brewers. But that little slump's coming. How will he react to it? How will he get through it? How will he combat it? And I'm not saying this is what happened with Keston, but I mean, Keston here comes on the scene, making some plays right away. We were pumped about him. We were excited about him as being the next good hitter, great hitter for the Brewers. And now we don't know if he will be a long-term fixture with the Brewers. He's in AAA right now. But will we ever see him as a long-term, player in the major leagues for the Brewers? I don't know. Thank gosh these youngsters are off to a good start right now, because, well, maybe that record's flipped. Instead of a 3-1 start, might be a 1-3 start. And how quickly things change, because what, 16, 17, 16 innings, we were maybe kind of thinking, what the heck is wrong with the Brewers? The first 16 innings of the season, what's weird? Offense struggling again, can't put up runs. And then, thanks to 3 runs in the 8th in game 2, they've gone on to put up 9 and 10. You know what I mean? So, all right, let's take a quick break here, change it up here a little bit. We'll talk a little green and gold. Nothing new on the Rogers front, so we don't need to hit up Rogers or anything like that. But we are getting a little bit closer to the draft and such. So we'll chat a little green and gold, Joe. Plus, forgot to mention, we've got RJ Cardinal coming up at about 8:25, 8:30. So we'll catch up with our Badger analyst from our sister station, the Zone in Madison. So we'll hit that up about 8:25, 8:30. And plus, we'll catch up with the Triple Steel. I know they're going to be they are in Alaska right now. So we'll catch up from Kyle, as they also kind of in a playoff hunt right now, too, as they start to wrap up their regular season. So we'll get updates on how the team is doing over there in Alaska. Also, don't forget to send me your grind my gears. I got a long one from Surveyor. I got to proofread it to make sure I can say it on the air. All right, we'll be back in just a few minutes. Dave, to answer your question on the texting line there, you do not have to pay or anything like that for the putting challenge on Friday over at Hy-Vee. Stop in, you get 30 putts. All right, you get 3 of them, and you get a raffle ticket just for trying. You're gonna be entered to win either a new Odyssey putter, new Callaway driver, some other stuff over there too. The more putts you make, obviously, the more tickets you're gonna get. So if you make one, you're gonna get some more tickets. You're gonna make a second putt, you're gonna get some more. Make a third, you're gonna get a boatload of them. Surveyor's already doing the trash talking, thinking he's gonna make 2 of those putts. I'll put the line. I'm hammering the under on that big time. I'm hammering it big time. I've already seen it. Got some hills, got some bunkers on the left, got a little water on the right, such so. But we'll be over there at Hy-Vee on Friday for a little Masters week already going off right now. But we'll be doing the show from Hy-Vee starting at 6 a.m. We got that putting challenge, the custom putting green built by our amazing friends at Carpet City Flooring Center over there. So stop on by. If you are a lefty, you'll have to bring your own putter, although Sam said that he'll leave his there. I don't know when Sam's going to show up, though, so you might want to bring yours. G-Man, I think you're a lefty, though, too, right? So, but otherwise, bring your own putter. We'll have some golf balls there and such, but I'll be doing the show live from there, and we'll keep the putting green going until about 10 a.m. or so. So should be a lot of fun. We got a lot of you still texting in, sending messages about the Brew Crew and some Bucks chat on here too. So looks like a lot of you fired up about this Brewers team. So we'll get back to that here in just a sec. Going to do a little bit of a shifting gear here, talk a little football as we get closer to the draft. What do we got? 4 weeks until to the first round of the draft. So we'll catch up with Joe here for a few minutes. Good morning, Joe. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It is April, and it is truly time. This is when I really get into the NFL draft, and as you said, we're about 4 weeks away from it, and this is a big draft for the Green Bay Packers with some definitive holes to fill. And so, it seems. And by the way, I do got to hand it out. Bryce Terang, man, that was so awesome yesterday, and so much fun to see with his parents there and everything. And so, a lot of cool stuff happening. This is the thing this time of year, and I love it because the NBA regular season is winding down. You've got Major League Baseball. You had the national championship weekend with the women and the men, and then you got the draft coming up. So Wisconsin fans, you're through the hell of winter, and now you're on the other side because sports can carry us through for the rest here. So it's a good time to be a sports fan.
No doubt about it, too. Don't forget the Masters. I know you're not a golfer, but you got the Masters, too, man.
You know what? Oh, absolutely. And that is such a iconic event. And so you're absolutely right. So shame on me for forgetting that. But, this is just a cool time of the year for a sports fan.
Let me ask you this, not to completely get off track, but, it was Jim Nance's final call last night. And I'll throw this out to everybody else, too. When I say the name Jim Nance, what's the first sport or what's the first thing you think of?
I think it's still the NFL for me. I know he's iconic as well with college basketball, but I still got to go with the NFL, and I think it's probably because the Jim Nance Tony Romo duet, if you will, color and play-by-play, and so. But he's one of those guys I think that has called so many cool games, and I put him up there, with the Al Michaels of the world and those types of things. And so, and it was pretty cool send off last night with him, and a lot of stuff today about it. So I would still say, though, in my opinion, NFL.
All right. I'm going to put up a Twitter poll, see where everybody else is on there. So otherwise, you don't have Twitter. I know some of you don't. You can hit us up with a quick text and such. But all right. So getting ready for the draft. Obviously, free agency is still going on. Packers haven't made really any type of moves so far in free agency. But yet Matt LaFleur, he wants a veteran wide receiver. They've talked about veteran quarterback. Something we haven't really talked about is maybe the backup quarterback option here for Green Bay. You look at the current market out there, do you think Green Bay needs a veteran quarterback? Or, do you look at like 2008 when Rodgers was getting the starter, and what they do? They go and draft Brian Braum and then Matt Flynn, and we know about the Brian Braum, how that worked out. But if you were running a show, would you go after one of these veteran quarterbacks? I mean, Matt Ryan's available. He's spent time with Matt LaFleur. I don't know if he'd be willing to come in as a backup. You got Teddy Bridgewater that's still out there, et cetera, et cetera. How important is it for this backup quarterback position for Green Bay this year?
I think it's critical. And, I think Jordan Love having, and not necessarily, saying that Jordan Love's going to fail or falter, but just having that voice in the quarterback room. And I think that's such a powerful influence. And yeah, you're right. In 2008, they did not go with that veteran quarterback. And I just think to have someone that's been through it, like a Teddy Bridgewater, and you look names like Mason Rudolph and some of the guys that are out there. I just think Jordan Love coming over to the sidelines and having a conversation with one of these quarterbacks, I think is critical. And again, I think the quarterback room is such a critical room and positional part of a team. And it's kind of a statement of the obvious, but yeah, I think to have somebody talking about what he's seeing out there and having the conversations as a peer-to-peer and a peer-to-peer who's been there, I think it's critical. So I think Green Bay still is going to be in the market for a veteran QB. And I guess when I look at the list out there, Captain, I mean, you got Blaine Gabbert out there, Chase Daniel, Trevor Siemian, Brian Hoyer, guys like that are available. And either any one of those names, I wouldn't necessarily hate, but the guy that I think, honestly, that I would look at the most is Teddy Bridgewater, because I just look at the adversity that Bridgewater has been through in his career. And it's really, I think, he's weathered the storm and weathered the fire. And I think he's come out on the other side. And, he's a smart quarterback. He's an intellectual quarterback. Like I said, he's seen almost everything there is. He's seen success in the NFL. He's seen injuries in the NFL, obviously, really bad injuries. And so, yeah, I think it's important for Jordan Love to have that guy in the locker room. So I still see that being a priority for the Packers.
How much of a priority is it for the running back position for Green Bay? Aaron Jones may be entering his final year with Green Bay. A.J. Dillon, entering his final year with a contract. How important do you think it is for Green Bay, or how high do you think Green Bay will address the running back position in this year's draft?
I think with this Matt LaFleur offense and what we've learned, and with a young quarterback now with Jordan Love starting, I think it's critical. And I think Green Bay probably in that third, fourth, fifth round, I think if the best player available is a running back, I see Green Bay making a move to do it. I also see Brian Gutekunst going back to the tradition of picking quarterbacks. I think if you're doing a Packer mock draft and you don't have a quarterback somewhere in those middle rounds, I think you're way off, because I think Gutekunst is going to go back to the Ron Wolf roots, where fifth, sixth, seventh round, if there's a guy they like there, they're going to pick him. And so I see running back in those mid rounds. I also see quarterback in those mid rounds. And again, there's obviously significant positions of weakness for the Packers, but I think running back and quarterback are going to be selected at some point in this year's NFL draft.
If there was a position that you could see Goody really hammering down on, like a few years ago, it was, wide receiver, Jamon Moore, Equinemius St. Brown, and MVS. And, 1 year for Ted, it was Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams back-to-back picks. We've seen kind of those runs before. If there was a position that you could see Goody doing that for Green Bay this year, what position do you think he would do that at?
I think it's got to be tight end. When you've got Josiah DeGuara and Tyler Davis as the only two tight ends on the roster right now, I think you have to look at this again. How are you going to build an offense and structure an offense around a young quarterback like Jordan Love? And in a draft where you've got arguably, I would put 5 tight ends in that conversation that could be first, could be second, could be early third round picks. I think you double down on that tight end position. I mean, one guy that I really like, and Pro Football Focus has him rated as the 43rd best player, is Sam Laporta. And he's the tight end from Iowa. He ran a 4.59 in the 40. And I just like offensive linemen and to a certain extent defensive linemen. I think regardless of record, I think Iowa has some positions that they deliver in the NFL, and I think tight ends is one of them. And so, there's a guy, when I say ironically ranked 43rd that's obviously one of the Jets' second-round picks. So if that happens to be it, there's a guy in the second round. But I see Goody doubling down with that tight end position because I think, again, how do you build an offense around a young quarterback? Running game, offensive line, receivers, but you also have to have that tight end, and I think it's just such a critical part of an offense. If you've got a guy who can create a mismatch but also seal the edge, I think that's critical. And so, like I said, a guy like Laporta, you've got Mayer out there, Kincaid out there, you've got all these guys that could be anywhere from first to third round picks, and that's where I think Goody doubles down.
Matt LaFleur last week at league meetings said that Rasul Douglas is going to be playing outside corner, and maybe most of it is because of Eric Stokes with his recovery from his foot and ankle injury. But he was asked about safety. He said Rasul probably could play it, but his best position is outside corner. Your thoughts on that? Because I know we've talked about Rasul moving over to safety. It sounds like that's not going to be a part of the plan. Do you agree with that? And if so, or now that, how important, I know we've talked about safety, but, you've thrown out a few names here, there. I've thrown out a few names here, there. Who are some other options at safety they could target in the draft?
Well, and look, I still think, and I get it. If you don't have Eric Stokes healthy, then it's almost you have to keep Rasul Douglas out there. And it's interesting too that Keyshawn Nixon has been talked about now as a slot guy, the guy that's going to play that slot. But the guy that I really like, that I just think is a complete football player, and I equate him very favorably to Leroy Butler, is Brian Branch. And when you look at the similarities and you look at their combine results, Branch runs a disappointing 4.57-ish. But then you look at what Leroy Butler did, and you look at some of the things that Butler did with his combine numbers, and they compare very favorably to Branch. And the other thing with Butler to Branch is you've got cornerbacks who transitioned to safeties. And I think Branch, when I look at it, I look at a guy like Minka Fitzpatrick as far as Brian Branch goes. I think he's a plug-and-play safety, and I think he's a guy that starts immediately, and it's just so football smart back there. And so that's a guy that I really, really like. And I think if the Packers go safety in the first round, Brian Branch is the guy. And I think he's going to be there. Again, that 15-ish area, I think, is a pretty good place for him to land. And when you talk about Rasul Douglas, and going back to that, it's interesting because the personnel department feels that he could be a safety, and the coaches feel like he could be a cornerback or should be a cornerback. And I just look at him playing man-to-man coverage versus zone coverage, and it just seems to me his skill set is much better in zone. And when you look at zone coverage, it translates well to playing in a safety because you've got the play in front of you, and you can make breaks on the ball. When you're man-to-man, your back is against the quarterback, and your back is to the quarterback, and he just doesn't have that short area quickness. Now, the one thing Rasul Douglas does well is he's a film rat. I mean, this is a guy that looks at film, watches film, takes the mental part of the game very seriously. And I think if Eric Stokes was for sure going to be healthy, they might look at this differently. But yeah, I would prefer Douglas at that safety position, but out of necessity, you may have to play him at the cornerback. And it will be interesting, Captain, because when you look at Keyshawn Nixon, and he's being talked about as the guy that plays that slot position. Now, Brian Branch could come in, and I could see him playing the slot position. They've already said that Darnell Savage Jr. is going to stay at that safety position, and so that's an area of need. But yeah, I think if Stokes is healthy, I think they probably look at that Douglas transition a little bit more seriously. But for now, it looks like they're going to either, maybe it's an Adrian Amos they bring back on a cheap deal. But I think you're going to be, this could be the type of situation. Remember when the Packers went out, during the 2009-2010 season, they got a guy like Charlie Pepra. And so maybe it's that type of veteran that you can combine with Darnell Savage or bring Brian Branch in as that competition. And so, yeah, it's going to be really interesting looking at that safety position, but that is certainly one of the positions where I think the Packers need to make some moves.
So, you mentioned Savage too, and LaFleur talked about him at, because a lot of us thought that is his best position, the nickel corner, playing the slot and such, and Matt LaFleur kind of downplayed that, said he'll be at safety. So assuming Savage will start the season off as one of the starting safeties, what type of safety do you think the Packers need? I know you talked a lot about Brian Branch, but You see all these different scouting reports on different safeties. Well, he's more of a box defender. He's more of a center fielder type. Pass coverage, can go up and hit the hole and tackling and that. What type of perfect safety would you like to see paired up with Darnell Savage in terms of a specific skill set? Do you want him more for coverage, or do you want him more helping out in run defense and playing the box?
It's interesting, Captain, because I look at this and I look at a Eugene Robinson kind of a safety, and it's hard to define a type of safety with one word. But I will say this: if you've got Darnell Savage back there, you need a cerebral, football savvy safety, and I think you need someone instinctive back there. And again, I think Eugene Robinson was a huge pickup back in the day for Green Bay because they paired him with Darren Sharper back in those days. And so, you're looking at a young safety type of a situation. And so I think it's the same type of thing. I think if you can get a cerebral guy back there, because the thing with Savage is this, the game hasn't slowed down. He's got all the physical tools, but when you look at the mental part of the game, it just hasn't slowed down for him. So I'm looking for a guy, and Adrian Amos, in my opinion, was the perfect fit for him because I think Adrian Amos, before this year, I really, really think that he was probably, one of your better defenders of the Green Bay Packers over the last several years. And the thing you loved about him is he was always in position and got others in position. So in the box, playing the center field type of safety, those types of things are important. But if you've got Darnell Savage back there, whether it's a rookie like Branch who does have that instinctive nature about him, or you go out and get a vet, I think it's someone who knows the cerebral part of playing the safety position. I just think that's a huge thing with Darnell Savage because he can't get that down yet. And really, time is running out on Savage's NFL career.
Yeah, and I know the one thing too, I look at that safety position and the emergence of these big and physical tight ends now, where you're asking these safeties to cover tight ends. And Savage has struggled, right, throughout his career so far, early part of his career to cover those tight ends, and maybe just because he is a little bit smaller of a tight end on there too. But you got to don't you have to factor that in a little bit there, Joe, with that safety position? Can they cover those tight ends? Because it sure seems like these tight ends are getting bigger, stronger, and a whole lot quicker these days.
No doubt. And I mean, look, we saw it in the playoffs, and Minnesota goes out and gets T.J. Hawkinson, and then when you look at what Hawkinson can do to a defense, when you've got a guy like Justin Jefferson on the outside, it's a game changer. And that's why, going back to it, I think Green Bay needs to double down on the tight end position. And conversely, when you're talking about defense, you need guys that can cover those guys in the seam. And so, yeah, it's interesting because Green Bay weak in a couple of specific areas, and actually pretty strong draft grades for those positions. And so I see Green Bay, hopefully solving that problem or addressing that problem on both sides of the ball. How do you cover the tight end, but also get me a tight end? And so I see Green Bay making moves in both of those directions in the NFL draft. And when I understand Brian Branch's combine didn't go well, but you just look at the player, and I truly think this guy is going to be one of the best safeties for many years to come. I love the way he plays football, and take out the 40 time, take out those types of things, and just watch game film. And you're going to see a lot of Leroy Butler. And that's again, I think if Green Bay gets him in the first round, I think that'd be a great fit for this defense.
Joe, appreciate the time as always. As we get a little bit closer to the draft, we'll hit up some more position groups and such. Good stuff. Have a good rest of the week, buddy, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
You got it. There you go. There's Joe hopping off here this morning. We got to take a quick break, and then we'll finish up the second hour with a little press pass. If you could ask one question to anybody in the sports world and get a truthful answer, what would it be? I've got mine coming up in just a couple minutes. A week from today, we'll be at the Lismore for the Packers tailgate tour. You can still get some tickets. Just go to Bolton Refuge House's websites and get your GA tickets. All going to help the Bolton Refuge House. It's a great cause. Let's help raise some money for Bolton Refuge House. You're going to be able to hang out with Aaron Jones, Romeo Dobbs, Elton Jenkins, Eddie Lacy, Haha Clinton Dix, Devon House, and such. So we'll see you there. I'll be helping MC and such. So should be a good night. Doors open at 6 p.m. again at the Lismore in downtown Eau Claire. You can also get the link at our website, sportstalk1051.com, right there on the homepage in the middle part of that page there too. So you can check it out over there. All right. Should be a lot of fun. All right, let's do a little press pass to close up the second hour. My press pass question is kind of coming off the heels of last night's national championship game. UConn winning it. UConn, 5 national championships since 1999. My question would be to Badgers athletic director Chris McIntosh. And I know everybody's been kind of talking about, Greg Gard, job on the hot seat, and really kind of looking at what McIntosh has done with the football program, making a change, men's hockey, making a change. And a lot of people kind of connecting the dots saying that McIntosh should make a change based off what he's done with the football in the men's hockey program. My question would be to Chris McIntosh and say, watching UConn win the national championship, does that make you a little bit more anxious to potentially make that move and bring in a new regime and a new head coach and that sort of thing? Dan Hurley came over from Rhode Island back in 2018. Rhode Island, Dan Hurley, the Hurley name in college basketball. You know the Hurley name, right? But, in 2001 and 2010, he's a high school coach, St. Benedict's Prep, and made the jump over to UConn. And I was looking at, I know Wisconsin, the admissions and that. I understand that. I totally get it. It's a little bit harder. But at the same time, watching a program like UConn, watching, their basketball team, their football team, okay, cool, whatever. Not to the level of expectations like the Badgers. But they're looking at the success that they've had with their basketball team. Does that make McIntosh just a little bit more antsy when he sees a program 4 seed going in and winning their 5th national championship when he's seen San Diego State in a national title game? The Final Four had FAU and Miami. Wisconsin didn't even make the tournament this year, for crying out loud. Seeing how the tournament went and the teams that were involved in the tournament and seeing the Final Four and the national championship. Chris, does that make you a little bit more antsy to potentially make a move? I don't think he's going to make a move, especially this late in the ball game, with it being April and such. But, if there was a year, for all the parity that we had in Wisconsin, didn't even make it, for crying out loud. Come on. What's going on here? That would be my press pass question to him. He would never admit it, obviously, but that's why we get to ask these questions and get the 100% truthful answer to it. So, all right. Coming up next hour, we will talk some Badgers with Mr. R.J. Cardinal. He's coming up towards the back end of the hour, towards the bottom of the hour, not back end, but 8:25. So we'll catch up with him, talk all things Badgers, and then we'll get back to more baseball talk. Wade Miley on the mound for the Brew Crew tonight. What are your realistic expectations for Wade Miley this year? Hit me up with a text, 715-830-1912. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Third hour kicking off on this Tuesday morning. How y'all doing? Appreciate you tuning in, checking us out, wherever you may be checking us out from. Do a little bit of a roll call if you'd like. Hit us up with the text. Tell us who you are and where you're listening to us from. 715-830-1912 on that Shoe Doctor's bullpen line. Coming up at the bottom of the hour here, you will talk with RJ Cardinal from our sister station, The Zone in Madison. Catch up on all things Badgers with him. I know we got some spring ball practice, football practice, and such going on too. So we'll catch up with RJ at the bottom of the hour. We'll get back to some more baseball talk. A lot of you excited about the Brewers right now. So we will get back to your texts and messages on Twitter and Facebook talking about a little bit about the Brewers here. Bucks are in action tonight too as they start to wrap up their regular season. Got the game against the Washington Wizards tonight, but you might want to do a little bit of a scoreboard watching because Boston is visiting Philadelphia. So Bucks fans, you're going to need to be 76ers fans tonight if you want a little bit of help in terms of securing that 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Question we've been kind of asking. It's up on Twitter now too. If you'd like, with Jim Nantz calling his final national championship game, final four yesterday. When you hear the name Jim Nantz, what is the one sport that comes to your mind first? And right now, 60.9% of you saying it's the Masters, followed by college hoops at 21.7%, and then the NFL at 17.4%. So if you don't have Twitter, you can text it or send it to us on our Facebook page. But we kick off this hour, as we usually do on Tuesday mornings during the season, talking a little hockey with our friends from the Chip with Steel. Kyle gets to come in because the team's in Alaska right now. Morning, Kyle. How you doing?
Good morning, Dan. Thank you so much for having us on, as always.
Yeah, you got it. So the Steel, how have you been catching up with them, staying in touch every day with Coach and the team up there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What an incredible run the Chip with Steel have been on. We sit in a pretty spot in the Midwest Division standings. You don't want to say, it's a lock yet, but we're looking pretty confident sitting third place in the division with games in hand. So
Yeah.
It looks really good.
You're up, third, up on 1 point on Kenai, who's in fourth. Fairbanks is about 3 points behind you when I looked at the standings there too. What do you think, Kyle? I mean, it's one thing that ask Coach Casey this week in and week out, but obviously during this last month or so, a little over a month, the stretch that you guys have been on, what do you think has been like a big kind of turning point maybe for this season?
At the start of the season, the Steel knew that they had plenty of talent, and that was never in question. It was about just putting it together as a team, start playing as a cohesive unit. Finally, things are starting to click a little bit for this squad, and the way that they're playing right now, they're playing for each other. They're playing with intensity, but they're also just making smarter reads with the puck, especially on the defensive end. We're getting pucks out, and we're moving it, and we're working well in transition, and we're really a good team under chaos. And I know you're probably like, how to exactly, what do you mean by that? Well, when there is scrambles in the offensive zone, we're able to retrieve pucks, and we don't panic. We make the smart play. We get it to the open guy. He has a little bit of time and space. And again, the skill comes into factor there, and we're able to get a higher production offensively, especially against some of the best defensive teams, best goalies in this incredible run that we've been on, getting points in 9 of our last 10 games.
You mentioned the chaos thing, and I instantly thought of the game from a couple weeks ago when you're going up against the Wisconsin Wendigo. Third period, you're down by 4 goals at that point, and yet you guys tie it up and force a shootout and earn a major points in that thing. And maybe that's the perfect example of what you were kind of just talking about, never kind of getting down or never feeling like you're out of it, and somehow tie it up in that third period.
Yeah, I mean, we play much better with the lead, like most teams probably do, but this team never quits. They don't panic, and they're constantly just churning their legs. They're keeping next shift. And in a game like that, when you're down 5-0 midway through and down 4 goals to the start of the third period, like, yes, you can say, oh, well, they came back in that game, they lost in a shootout. But to me, it was the following night that game kind of made the impact on, because now you have confidence going into night number 2 against the best team in the Midwest Division, the Wisconsin Wendigo from Eagle River. Very talented squad, best defensive group. in the division by far. You gain confidence from the night before. Say, hey, we can hang with these guys. We know that we're a better team when we play our game.
Mhm.
And the next night, they prove that. They go out there and they put up 5 goals and they really take it to them. So to me, in my opinion, when the Steel are on, they're as good as any team in the division. And even during that losing stretch during December and January where games just weren't going their way, they were the aggressor. They were outplaying teams. And I feel it's exciting.
Mhm.
Finally the fortunes are starting to change a little bit.
Yeah, you got 4 games left on the schedule coming up here, and the next 2 before they can come back home here is going up against Fairbanks, and Fairbanks currently in that 5th seed, and they've been struggling as of late. It's only won 7-1, I think, in their last 10 or so games here, but they're also just 3 points back from where you guys are standing right now in 3rd place. Is that something, you kind of always get nervous, I think, with a desperate team, right? Trying to fight for their lives right now. But I have to imagine, Casey, I've gotten to talk to him for a little bit there. That's something that they're probably well aware of as they're getting ready to go up against Fairbanks.
Absolutely. Fairbanks needs to win both games in regulation mathematically to stay alive because of their 2 games played more than the Steel. So if they're sitting 3 points back, they got to get 4 clean points in order to jump the Steel to have any chance to be mathematically in it. So in that atmosphere, which is known to be the best in the entire North American Hockey League, they're going to be aggressive. They're going to be raucous. Like the Steel have to be ready to go. And this weekend against Anchorage, 1, 2 of 3, which is great, but they gave up the first goal in the first 3 minutes of all 3 games. That they've got to start better, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the road in Fairbanks, a desperate team, like you said, they're going to be ready to go. And so the Steel have to kind of maybe take the early blow a little bit,
Right.
bend but don't break, and then kind of settle into their game in the second period and take it over a little bit.
It's interesting you phrase it like that because you hear that a lot in sports. Like, can you go into a hostile environment? Can you take that initial crowd, the energy? Maybe it's like in a football game or something like that. You go to a hostile environment, you're the opposer, NFC, AFC championship, whatever. Can you survive that initial wave? I think is what they kind of say with the emotions. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're referring to here with the Steel going up against Fairbanks.
Yeah, I mean, you do see that in football all the time, right? The crazy atmospheres, and then after the, midway through the second quarter, teams start to settle in a little bit. Okay, we've heard this atmosphere for now an hour. Or, it's not to settle in and play their game. That's why you often see comebacks late in games like that because teams are a little bit more accustomed to it. But yeah, I mean, can you survive the initial excitement there in Fairbanks? I mean, it's a crazy. I mean, if you've never been there, quickly to describe it to you, it's a small but compact arena, and obviously in Fairbanks, Alaska, there's not a heck of a lot to do. So the community is so invested in the Fairbanks. That's the thing to do on your weekend nights, and they do a great job up there putting on a show, and the fans are on their feet, light shows, everything. It's pretty crazy up there. But yeah, the Steel have been there multiple times this year. They've been successful this year playing Fairbanks on the road, 3 wins out of 4 games on the road this year against Fairbanks, and just straight up head to head, they've been pretty good. So, I think in a way, our team actually rises to the occasion a little bit so far this year.
So you talked a little bit about the mathematical stuff in there, and I know talking to Coach before he left, he was hoping when they came back for their final home series that maybe catch a little bit of a breather where they're not playing for their playoff lives, kind of that sort of thing. Do you know what the scenarios are heading into this weekend's games?
Yeah, so if the Steel win in regulation and Anchorage loses in regulation in game 1 of these upcoming series, the Steel will mathematically clinch a playoff spot. So it's win and Anchorage just lose 1 and we're in. But even the event that the Steel lose and maybe Anchorage loses 2, I mean, they're still sitting in a really solid spot because when you think about it, especially coming off this series versus Anchorage, you look at them in the standings right now, I believe they're 6th. Are they 6th place? But I mean, seriously, you come off of a 3-game series versus them. Those are 4-point swings every single game. I mean, if the Steel don't win in game number 3 of that series, instead of sitting 5 points up on them in the standings, they're sitting 1. Like, that's a massive difference with just a handful of games left to go in the season. So the fact that they took 2 of 3, and that especially at game number 3, a critical tilt, is a big boost.
Absolutely. And I know it's got a little bit of a time change and such, but I know there's been some people kind of watching and following along on like hockey TV and that sort of thing too. And that's what Steel fans can still do, right?
Yes, if you want to watch, you can always watch on hockey TV. It's definitely late games, so you'd
Right.
have to make sure.
But hey, the playoff
you're
spots
up,
on the line right now, right?
Yeah, I mean the Steel fans are so invested. Of being back here, I can kind of see who's watching and who's following along. But we have a great, obviously, billet infrastructure, and these billet families host players and stuff. But they all stay up. They're all the parents of the players stay up. But then just our fans in our community, they're really rallying around the run that this has been on. And if they do clinch a playoff spot this upcoming weekend, it'll be the first time in the organization's history.
Right.
We're going to the Robertson Cup
and
playoffs.
that's pretty darn exciting there. Do you know off the top of your head plays that is that something you're kind of scoreboard watching here a little bit too?
Yeah, actually, Anchorage is going to play Kenai. So to me, that final playoff spot is going to actually come down to those two battling it out. And in a way, it's good for the Steel because they're going to be beating up on each other, stealing points from each other. I'd say the Steel, like, mathematically most likely to end up third place in the Midwest Division standings and probably play the Minnesota Wilderness in round number 1, which would be competitive. These two teams have played 8 times already this year. 7 of them have been decided by 1 goal.
And that's interesting too, because that's who you guys play in your final 2 home games too.
I don't like that. We're going to play them the 2 final regular season games and then potentially 5 more in the playoffs. We'll play them 7 straight. Like that.
Because it's a best of 5?
It'll be a best of 5 in round 1. And I don't like that. But at the same time, I also am very glad we don't have to make a second trip to Alaska, especially after just coming back. Like that's a huge blessing.
Right. No doubt. So, you know what? I don't want to jinx anything, so I don't want to get too far ahead of the postseason there. I'm kind of superstitious. I don't know if you are a little bit, but I mean, they're in a great spot right now. I mean, it sure looks like you guys are gonna get this thing done.
I think so. You know, you don't want to jinx anything, but it only really is going to take 1 or 2 more wins to get it done in the next 4 games. And you can even get some help from out of town scores to just get it done itself. So this is a really exciting time for our community because we've never had Robertson Cup playoff games in Chippewa Valley. Our last home game versus the Wisconsin Wendigo in game number 2 was sold out. It was packed to the brim.
Coach showed me a video of the people waiting outside to get in.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
They were all the way down by the street and everything was packed. Like the whole Rally the Valley mantra has worked this year for the Steel. And it's great to see the community come out and support these boys. This is such an entertainment value here in this community. The fact that we get to host playoff games is going to be, I don't know, it kind of gives me chills a little bit knowing that what we've done this year, building the crowds up, like it could be even better than that.
And I know Coach told me too last week, it was off the air, but he mentioned I think he said 13 NHL scouts were in the building too, somewhere around there. I mean,
yes,
that's you look at the talent on your team right now. That's the thing too, is maybe some people, if you don't realize that, there's NHL scouts watching these kids, these players.
Yes, we do feel we have 1 or 2 NHL talents on our team. I mean, of course, our goalie, Adam Gajan, has made headlines all over the world because of his play in the World Juniors and in Slovakia and stuff. But we even feel like we have a couple guys that are fringe players who could potentially be drafted. So these scouts have to, it's really to find the battle. Sorry, how do I say this? The battle is to find a hidden gem. And these scouts are competing with each other in a way to see who that player might be. And we have a lot of talent on our team. And when we put it together, we're as good as any. So it's really cool to have some NHL teams there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And I'm just kind of looking at the schedule too. And I'm like, okay, well, is it potentially that the Steel could know if they've clinched a playoff spot? Kenai and Anchorage play a half an hour before they start. So I don't know if I don't know if Coach is going to have anybody let them know, because you're kind of curious, like celebration on the ice, if they clinch a spot or anything like that. Are you going to be that man to be texting?
Sure. I might be. I've been texting them in between periods, and believe it or not, you would think like coaches, at least to me, when I first got with the team, I thought that coaches did a little bit different things in the intermission, like make more adjustments, watch film.
Yeah.
Casey and Doc are pretty relaxed during games. They work really hard in practice. We have high intensity practices, and then during games, it's not the yelling and screaming style kind of
Yep.
coach. It's pretty laid back and just kind of playing a chess match in a way with trying to get the matchups that they want on the ice. I mean, the work all week has already done. And then the games in themselves, they're pretty laid back. So during the intermissions, they're pretty casual.
Yeah.
Even when we're down, they're not like, flipping notes, trying to figure things out. They're not scrambling, they're calm.
Mhm.
And they're just trying to make whatever adjustments they identify what the other team is doing. And they say, hey, they're doing this, and they make the small adjustments, but it's not at all what you maybe think.
Right. And your player interviews when they're not running on the podcast. So one thing I've always kind of thought with the players, I mean, these are younger kids, but they seem to be very kind of down to earth and in the moment. Like, they're extremely focused. I mean, I can imagine as kids, I keep saying kids, but like myself at their age, going across the country, maybe even going across the world and playing hockey and trying to chase your dream and all that sort of thing. But from listening to your interviews, which are fantastic with these players, it just seems like they're very, down to earth, yet they know what's at stake with not only this team, but potentially their careers too.
You said it. I mean, their dream is to play hockey at a Division I level, and of
Mhm.
course to get a scholarship and enjoy their college experience. And everything they do needs to be geared towards that.
Mhm.
And how they speak on the microphone and speak to the media, but also, of course, how they carry themselves off the ice. How are they nutritiously, making sure that they are healthy and taking care of their body? Are they making smart decisions late at night when people aren't watching them? And they're
Mhm.
young kids, like you said. They have a lot of freedom here, believe it or not. But they have to be invested and focused and be surrounded by the right people. And we feel like with the Steel, from the top down, Casey Mignon, Steve Doherty, myself, like we have expectations for them to do that, not only so that we can win as an organization, but we can help them develop in their careers.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So looking at, because, when they do come back, hopefully maybe a playoff spot clinched in that. So we have to pack that stadium up with your final 2 home games. And hey, that might be, as you said, maybe a little bit of a preview of what a playoff series could look like against the Wilderness, potentially. It looks like right there.
They have a really good team,
Mhm.
and there's no question. But we've 7 of the last 8, as I said, have been decided by 1 goal. 3 of those games were decided in a shootout. We can hang with them. They have a very
Mhm.
talented goaltender, Swedish goaltender, in Isaac Posh. He's been outstanding this season. They have some playmakers who came back from the USHL, but we neutralized them the last time we saw them in Cloquet, and those were 2 tight, competitive games. It's just going to be more of the same. So we feel
Mhm.
like it's going to be a high-intensity series. There's not going to be a lot of space out there. Most of the games this year that we played against them have actually been low scoring to kind of prove my point. Like, these 2 teams are evenly matched. So
Right.
sometimes when you get games that are willy-nilly, high-flying, fast-paced, sometimes it's like, either one team's just being opportunistic and stuff like that. But no, these 2 teams play similar structure,
Mhm.
and it's going to be fun. It's
Yeah.
gonna be real fun.
So put it on your calendars. The 14th, you got $2 beer night by Anderson Windows, and then the 15th, it's fan and billet appreciation night and auction off jerseys. That too. Nice. Kyle was telling me you were being, or excuse me, Coach was telling me, Coach Casey last week was telling me you're being a little hard on yourself on the video. That was a sweet video you did.
Really?
Last week.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Did
It
you
was-
see that?
I did see the video.
I appreciate
I
that.
wish I had your skills when it came to stuff like that, and I don't. So, fantastic video with the black jerseys.
Thank
the
you.
real reveal on there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Video is something I'm trying to get better at,
Yeah.
like editing softwares and Adobe Premiere and stuff. But we did a little black jersey reveal video. If you haven't
Yep.
checked it out, it's on our social media. It did pretty well engagement wise. But I just felt the need. This was my initiative, so I'm actually quite proud of it.
Mhm.
The Steel needed a black jersey. I mean, we have green and white in our color, and black is like our 3rd color. Well, black jerseys are so cool.
Right.
And if you do them
Yeah.
the right way, like, it can make such an impact just like on the ice. Contrast with the white ice, it looks great. So
Mhm.
I felt like there was a need. I didn't want to overdo it. It's pretty solid black with green, white, and
Mhm.
green on the sleeves, and it's a green
And they stand
collar
out
as
too.
well.
They
Yeah.
pop that way.
Green lettering with the white outline, so it does pop, so it's not like you can't see the numbers, and it's simple, it's clean. The socks have that same stripe on the bottom, so it looks really well done. I'm really proud of it. We felt like our green jersey was a little outdated, so I'm excited to flip for the black. And sometimes you see this, like playoff teams will switch to a jersey for the playoffs exclusively, and I kind of like that. So I think we're going to try to do that for the playoffs ourselves.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a couple people that were texting, and I'm sure, when we get to that point, you'll have an announcement. But playoff tickets, they're just kind of already pre-planning there. But once that becomes official, we'll pass that word along over there.
Yeah,
for playoff tickets.
I think it's gonna be pretty similar. Like just we do cash at the door with the Chippewa Steel, but you can also get family 4-packs online. You can do group outings. So check out our website for more options. But it's gonna be pretty similar. We're not gonna raise prices or anything like that. So.
Right. So you got people already excited, already talking playoffs and getting ready to go over there. So that'll start the week after the rest of the end of the regular season.
Yeah, we're projected to go on the road 1 week after the regular season and then host games 3 and 4 in Chippewa Valley, and that'll be probably April 29th or 30th, end of the month.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense there too. So hey, maybe even clinching. Moving on then. So how does the playoff structure work? Do you know off the top of your head how it kind of works?
Unusual playoff structure, and I'll briefly explain it. So it's 5-game series to start, 5-game series in round number 2, and then each team, or each division, I should say, we have 4 divisions. You're going to get your best division winner out of all 4 of those, and then it'll go to Blaine, Minnesota, neutral site location for all 4 teams.
Okay.
And then it's semifinal game 1, final game 1 game.
Oh wow!
So if we go from final, we go from the first and second round being a 5-game series, and then the final is a single game. So it's like
sudden death,
all the marbles. But
the
league wants to make sure it's done quickly, and they have this event in Blaine, Minnesota, because pretty much every single college can attend, and it can be highly scouted by NHL scouts as well. It's a quick get off the flight from Minneapolis, go to Blaine, and it's a super rink there. So there's 8 rinks, and they can do all these games, and they have prospect challenges there, and they put on this whole show and event. So they want to get it done quickly. So the 1 game decides the Robertson Cup.
Man, that's got to be a high pressure situation there.
Absolutely.
I hope you guys are in it though.
No, I hope so. We'd have to go on a serious run. We feel like we can do it.
Well, you're playing some really great hockey right now.
Yeah, we feel our division's the best. So if we can get out of our division, we have a good a shot as any.
I agree. Well, Kyle, it was great catching up with you again this morning, buddy. And we're going to be following along on social media to kind of see where everything's at playoff wise and that this weekend for sure.
We feel pretty good about it. So thank you, Dan, for having us on as always, and make sure you come out to the final home games and then the playoff games as well.
14th and the 15th, again, $2 beer nights, April 14th, and then the 15th, get the fan and billet appreciation nights over there at Chippewa Ice Arena. So Kyle, best of luck, bring back some W's, and we're going to be talking for a few more weeks because of the playoffs there too. We'll call it. So
absolutely, Dan. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You got it. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then coming up, we'll get to RJ Cardinal, our Badger analyst from the Zone in Madison, after these quick words. Moving from the Chippewa Steel hockey to a little Badger men's hockey. Let's bring in Mr. R.J. Cardinal from the Zone in Madison, our Wisconsin Badger analyst. All right, RJ. So Chris McIntosh making his, would you say, second biggest hire after obviously Luke Fickell and such, but Mike Hastings is going to be the new men's hockey coach for this Badger hockey team coming over from Minnesota State. Do you like this move? Do you like this hire? I mean, he's sure you look at the resume, it's pretty darn impressive, especially when you look at the amount of his win percentage and compare it, to some of the current teams or current coaches out there in the last few years. He looks like he has an impressive resume. What are your thoughts on the hire?
I mean, it seems like one of those that is awesome. We actually talked with Barry Richter, former Badger and son of Pat Richter, on the Friday, the day after the announcement came down on the 30th, and he's sitting here telling us he's getting texts from other guys who are still involved in college hockey and all that, saying this is a better hire than Granato. And really, the people loved the Granato hire because of Don Granato, not necessarily Tony.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's people who are pointing to the issue of Don Granato leaving as the reason the Badgers kind of took a dip. But this is one where you're looking at a guy who head coach at the USHL, head coach at Minnesota State, was an assistant coach under Dean Blaze, under Don Lucia, and has been an assistant coach with Mako, who's now the head coach at Minnesota. So I mean, Motzko, I think. Yeah, sorry, Mako's a wrestler. So about that. It seems to be one of those that it's a guy who knows winning hockey, knows his style, and knows the players he needs for his style. And it's really one of those where this time around in the recruiting cycle, he lost recruits to Wisconsin. So it almost seems like Wisconsin was pattern earlier to more morph into what we kind of see that Minnesota State was doing, where they're going after guys who are talented enough to maybe go to the NHL, but they're going to be here about 3 years before they head off to their pro career. So we're going to see a lot more USHL guys. We're going to see a lot more of those Canadian juniors. We're going to see, and he even mentioned it in his couple of press conferences he's done. His recruiting strategy is going to change in the fact that he is not going to go nationwide. Now that he's at Wisconsin, he can go worldwide to get the guys he wants. So it's one of those where it's almost like the same time.
Nope.
We had a bunch of opportunities to go elsewhere. Like, people offered you jobs. Why Wisconsin? And he goes, "You just said it. It's Wisconsin." And sure, it's you can say Wisconsin's down right now, and they have, but historically, up until the 2010s, you're talking about one of the blue chippers in college hockey, and still up there in the ranks of tops in national championships. And it's been 2006 they had one. So I think it's a good hire. Time will tell, but the way he talks about the guys he gets for his system, who are more about the name on the front of the jerseys than the name on the back, and that's when we had talked to Barry Richter, when we had talked to some other former players that he would bring in when he did interviews down here on the Zone, those guys preached that. They're like, we never played for an individual. It was playing for that Wisconsin diagonally across your chest. It didn't matter whose name was on the back. You played for Wisconsin. You played for the guy on your line. You played for the guy on your shift. It was selfless hockey, and that seems to be what Hastings' approach and style of play is.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Minnesota State hockey and their, the Mavericks and just kind of what they've done under his regime. I mean, it's pretty darn impressive. And then when you look at what Luke Fickell, where he's come from, and now where Mike Hastings comes from, it sure seems like Chris McIntosh doesn't care if you're a former Badger or have any Badger connections. He just wants the best coach available out there.
Yeah, it does seem like that as well. He's also showing maybe using a search firm is helpful. Not making the statement, you are the search firm. But yeah, you look at what he did at Mankato. The 16 years they were a D1 program before he got there, 2 20-win seasons. Since he had been there, 20 wins every year, I think it was. So, I mean, 20 wins every year, 8 NCAA tournament appearances. I believe since he got there, Wisconsin had only had 2. So, I mean, that's a guy who's took a program who was near the bottom of the WCHA every year. His first year there, he had him in 4th place and that's before Minnesota and Wisconsin joined the Big Ten. He still had them competing before the rest of the old WCHA left for the National Collegiate Hockey Conference. So, I mean, he had them competing with blue bloods like Denver, North Dakota, CC, Minnesota, Wisconsin. I mean, to finish 4th in that group alone it shows you how good of a coach he was in a 1-year turnaround. And then, yeah, he stayed competitive, and the lowest he ever finished in the WCHA and the CCHA was 4th. So, I mean, he's a guy who can get the most out of his players. And listening to his little introduction ceremony and then his press conference, it sounds like he's a guy who has the utmost respect for his players. He always tells them the why, not because I said so, but he gives them the why we're doing something, and is a guy who just commands respect, and not so much puffing his chest out saying, you need to respect me. The way he acts, he gets the respect he deserves.
Switching over to football, and maybe this kind of relates to hockey now too, because we know Mike's getting was it double the pay that he was getting over there at Minnesota State, and then I just saw Jeff Petrikis kind of go through some of the assistant pays, and Phil Longo is getting paid $1.25 million, which I think that's around what Jimmy Leonard got, or maybe even a little bit more. So
it's right around there.
Yeah. So I mean, RJ, the last few years, ever since Chris McIntosh is coming in here, coaches are getting paid. What do you think has changed in that department?
Honestly, I never bought into the we're not competitive in salary. I mean, the only one who really made a lateral move in terms of position was Dave Aranda when he left for LSU. But, I mean, not too many other conferences pay, I'll call it head coaching money for coordinators, We had Dave Dorn leave to go be a head coach. You're not going to pay him head coach money to stay at Wisconsin. You had other position coaches leave for a coordinator position. You're not going to pay your defensive line coach $1.2 million to stay as a defensive line coach. He left to go be a D coordinator at Pitt. There's things like that happened. Yes, Wisconsin has upped their payments, but it's not like they were drastically underpaying people. I think that was just the perception Brett Bielema gave to explain why coaches were leaving. And you know what? If you have good coaches, which he did, and there's no doubt about it, they left for better positions. It's just one of those. I never really bought into it, and I think yes, they're catching up with the market, but before they were not that far behind the market. So it was more or less pay raises for people, because their job titles changed.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's almost kind of like maybe kind of getting leaked out there a little bit more to change that perception a little bit?
It also goes out every year because you're a public institution.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it seems it's more now upfront than waiting till the end of the year to say, here's what 13 of the 14 Big Ten schools paid their coaches because one's a private school.
Mhm.
So yeah, it is getting out there a little more, and I think some of that has to do with the internet sleuthing and how far advanced that's become. But yeah, it's probably helping the cause that it's actually getting out there earlier now, and people aren't surprised by it when Wisconsin's average assistant pay goes, and people put that number out there. But you also got to take in consideration there's a lot more position coaches than coordinators and head coaches, so even some of those lower numbers will bring that total down. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's nice to see higher pay and more what people look at and see a lot less of a pay gap. But yeah, it's something that is newer to Wisconsin as of late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. RJ Cardinal, our Badger analyst, joining us here this morning. So, RJ, what's we got spring ball still going on for this football team?
Yeah, what I think we're about to have practice number 5, and we just saw. I guess after 4 or 3 practices, they decided to unleash the offense. As our sports director Zach Halprin said, while he was at practice the other day, uh, they had a play clock going, and the ball was never snapped after 30 seconds on the play clock. So it seems to be it's going to be a little bit more of an up tempo game than Wisconsin fans are used to. But that being said, we've heard Longo say multiple times we will be able to slow the game down if we need to kind of run the clock. So get used to a more up-tempo Wisconsin offense. Not a true air raid, uh, but I mean, everybody's going to think it is because we're going to be throwing the ball a lot more than the actually 49% that it was under Paul Chryst. It just so happens it looks like a lot more running happened. But yeah, I think you'll see a little bit more lean towards the passing game. But then I also have to believe Phil Longo because he seems to be very honest about things,
Yeah,
whether
I've
it's
noticed
on
that
social
too.
media or in interviews. Like he said, I'd have to be stupid not to use those 2 running backs. So we'll see what this offense becomes, but it sounds like it's going to be a more spread up tempo zone scheme than really a true air raid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So, RJ, have you seen anything in terms of, cause I think a lot of people are anxious with the Badger basketball team now. Have you seen any updates on like transfer portal? Jordan Davis is leaving. We know he's kind of moving on. Not too surprised, I don't think, considering he lost his starting job and, maybe going somewhere else, but have you seen or heard anything else regarding the men's basketball team?
There's a Wyoming guard that Wisconsin's been connected to. There's it's one of those I not specifically like names I remember or anything like that, but there's 3 or 4 guys Wisconsin has had their name on a list of the player says they've been in contact with, or one of the recruiting services said they've been told here's the list of teams that have contacted this player since they've entered the transfer portal. So it's one of those. They seem active, and it's one of those where who really knows at this point? Because I mean, last year Wisconsin also was on a list of a bunch of people, and still currently, even with one guy departing, Wisconsin will be over its roster limit, even with the freshmen coming in. So there's still pieces that need to move here in order for things to happen. And I don't know if it's like, the NFL salary cap kind of thing where, hey, you can have as much salary on your books as you want until X date, So I don't know if you can have a kid come through the portal, be on your roster, and still have too many guys on your roster. It's still one of those that not really sure how that works. But there's definitely needs to be a lot more movement here on the people leaving the roster front before we can really get anything concrete.
Mm-hmm. All right, RJ. So when the launch, is that next week or this weekend again? Remind me.
The 22nd. So we got 3 weeks.
3
is
weeks.
the launch. Earth Day, if you will. So
Okay.
it's really good to have something called the launch on Earth Day.
Right? Oh man, but all right, RJ. Hey, appreciate the time as always, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch up with you again next week. We might have to talk a little bit about the combine's already passed, the draft, and some of these Badger prospects getting drafted here in a couple weeks.
I think we can be doing that next week. So yeah, we will talk to you then.
All right, RJ. There you go. There's RJ Cardinal, our Badger analyst for this morning. We got to take a quick break because we're running out of time here. We're running out of time, man. I'm going to cover some bases. Brewers taking on the Mets tonight. Predictions. Give them to me. All right, just a few minutes to the top of the hour. Let's kind of cover some bases here. Brewers back in action tonight. Can they repeat what they did yesterday, putting up the 10 runs against Max Scherzer this time? Wade Miley is going to be on the mound for the Brew Crew, so we'll see. You put up 10 against Scherzer. Now we're cooking. But, yeah, we'll see. Game 2 of this series coming up tonight. You can catch the action right here at 105.1 FM and 790 AM. That pitch will start at, just double check, at 6:40. First pitch slated to start around 6:40 tonight. Otherwise, you got the Bucks too. Bucks are going to be on our sister station tonight. So if you'd rather listen to the Bucks game, they're going to be on our sister station, 95.9 Jams, 1150 AM, 95.9 FM. So if you're scrolling through and like, what the heck, where's the Bucks game? And you're hearing Bob Uecker or such, Bucks are going to be on our sister station tonight. That's what I've been told. So passing along the word to everybody out there. What else do we got on the docket here to kind of cover some of the bases here? We talked a little bit about obviously national championship last night. Majority of you saying, yes, UConn is now a blue blood program or is a blue blood program. A lot of you saying if Indiana and UCLA are still considered blue blood programs, that you would put UConn in that blue blood program. I would agree. I've got UConn as a blue blood program, so why not? What else do we got on here? We've got the quick update on the Twitter poll here. In case you don't have Twitter, we asked, when you hear the name Jim Nantz, what's the first sport that you think of? And right now, it's not even that close. 67.6% of you saying it's the Masters, followed by college hoops at 17.6%, and then the NFL at 11.8%. 2.9% of you, I swear, every time I do this, people don't follow directions. But when you put other and then say tweet what the other is, nobody tweets it. So the 2.9% of you who picked other and you didn't tweet it at me, I don't know what other one you're talking about. So, but nonetheless, 67.6% of you saying it is the Masters. Speaking of the Masters, saw Gary D'Amato, who's been on our program before, but covers golf, especially here in Wisconsin. But he had a tweet a little bit ago, about 40 minutes ago. Says one more bit of live news, LIV, live golf tour, right? Says Brooks Koepka confirmed that if one of the 18 live players should win the Masters, the other 17 would be there to celebrate with him on the 18th green. Not sure that gesture would be universally appreciated here. Oh boy. Getting some more drama. I mean, maybe it's getting played up a little bit more, this whole drama thing. I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out and such. But I know Brooks said the other day that he kind of said it was all media driven, that him and Rory were like hanging out, the other day and that sort of thing. But, we'll see it once everything gets teed off on Thursday. See how it all plays out. But, and again, I don't know if it'll be like a Ryder Cup type of celebration at the 18th green. I mean, if it's like that, then I can see people getting upset about it. But then it'll add a little bit more fuel to the rivalry, perhaps. But he's also indicating, too, I'm assuming then that means that, even if one of those live players doesn't even make the cut, a lot of those guys leave town right away. I'm assuming that means they're going to be sticking around, watching the whole thing. So, what else do we got here on the dockets or covering the bases here? We talked UConn, we talked Brewers, we talked Bucks and such. All right, so tomorrow we'll recap the Bucks game against the Wizards. Reminder, you want to do a little scoreboard watching. Boston visiting the Philadelphia 76ers tonight. Big game in terms of the standings in the Eastern Conference. So we'll be recapping all that tomorrow. Obviously talking a little Brewers. Quite a few of you chiming in about Wade Miley, saying he is a wild card to this team. More so in the fact that if he does or is that pitcher that we saw when he was with the Brewers, and some of you mentioned even the Astros, I would throw in maybe the one year he was healthy with the Reds. But if he is that type of pitcher, if he can stay healthy and be that type of pitcher again, there's a few of you saying top starting rotation in the National League. All right. I like the predictions. I like the bold predictions. Probably not that too far off or not even wrong. I mean, Burns and Woodruff, they pitched to what they're capable of, and Freddie Peralta looked pretty darn good yesterday. Not a hard argument to make. So we'll get to recap the Brewers as well tomorrow, plus showdown, stock reports, whose stock is up, whose stock is down. We'll hit that up too. And then we might do a little sports vigilante. We'll see if we got time. All right. Have a good Tuesday. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, just past 6.